In today's Leeds news, games moved for TV, Fenerbahce fullback linked, no Adjei talks held, Galletti claims Gnonto interest, Daniel Farke on Spence, and press conference reaction. Hiya folks, Jer here on the 5th of January, Friday, with your Leeds United news. There's a fair bit to get through, so we won't hang around. We will be doing a press conference reaction towards the back end of this video. Normally I try and keep them separate if we can, but given that the Spence situation forms such a big part of the press conference, I'm going to cover a little bit there. There are some injury concerns as well to keep an eye of. So if you haven't watched it, we'll cover that. If you have watched it, that's fine. We'll cover the news in the first half and then we'll move on. Right, let's stop faffing about and get into this and crack on with your Leeds United news, and we'll start off with games that have been moved for TV. And Leeds United have announced the games that have been selected for TV in February and that have been moved. Leeds have had 3 fixtures selected by Sky TV, 4 matches on television in February. The Swansea trip away will now be held on Tuesday the 13th of February with a 7:45 kickoff. I'm sure fans will love going to Swansea on a Tuesday night. Plymouth away has been moved to Saturday the 17th, has now been moved to 12:30 kickoff for TV. And Leeds' home match against Leicester has understandably been selected for a Friday night kickoff, 23rd of February, 8pm kickoff there as well. That match will be televised and that shouldn't shock anybody. That'll be a big match in the league this season. So Leeds looking to get 6 points over Leicester. Leicester looking to fix their home defeat to Leeds as well as they continue to run away with the table. Let's get into some players that have been linked, and we've got some clarification on some stuff. We've got some news coming out of Italy, which is never great, but we'll start off with Fenerbahce stuff in terms of transfers. And a Fenerbahce fullback has been linked with a move to Leeds, and according to reports in Turkey through the outlet Star, they are claiming that Fenerbahce fullback Bright Osayi-Samuel is now available for sale and could move for around £9 million. The publication states that the former QPR player has been watched several times by Leeds, was linked with a move to Leeds in the summer as well, and that's probably where this is coming from, to be completely honest. He's a good player. He had a very good spell at QPR. He is an exciting player. He has been watched by Farke before, and Leeds have been linked with him before, but a permanent move looks unlikely. Leeds continue to have the rhetoric around a loan and a quiet window coming from the club, which means a move is very unlikely for a £9 million permanent move. Leeds could get a loan move there, maybe an option next season. It looks as though, because of the claims in the Daily Mail piece around the 49ers yesterday, that the loans would be to get Leeds into the Premier League, but that Leeds are planning a major overhaul of the squad once they get there to maintain their position in the Premier League. And that kind of means to me that any kind of permanent moves are probably off the table in terms of this, but you should be worried about too many loans as well, because if it's not going well, loan players can get disinterested pretty quickly. So it's an interesting one, but good player. He's a right back. Leeds possibly now need a right back, or do they? We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to Farke's reaction on that. Moving on, let's talk about Nathaniel Adjei, and he has been linked continuously with Leeds over the last couple of months. And as of Tuesday this week, there were reports coming out of Hammarby that Leeds and Hammarby had sat down or were organising to sit down and have a meeting around the potential fee for the player. Now, according to Football Scandalin, Hammarby sporting director and Mikael Helmberg has said this isn't the case and has denied it as of now. Hammarby Sporting Director did say the following: "We do not have meetings with Leeds booked. It has been concrete before and we have dismissed that. I have met with his agent and discussed this with him. I know there is interest in Adjei, but there has been nothing concrete. After that meeting, there have been no scheduled meetings or anything concrete." The article does go on to say that Adjei would be a strong signing for Leeds United, but as of yet there have been no concrete talks. Trying to read through the translation on this as well, where he said it has been concrete before, which suggests that there was direct contact between Leeds and the player before, or Leeds and the club before, possibly in the summer, and that went away. Leeds obviously then brought in Joe Rodon, and he's saying as of now there's nothing concrete and there has been no concrete contact between the two clubs. So as of right now, looks like it's off the table. He'll be a very cheap signing, anywhere between $2.5 million to $5 million is what's been rumoured, so just pieces there as well. Moving on to the interesting one, this is going to keep on happening, we've said this before, and it's around Willy Gnonto, and it's more around the noise coming out of Italy than coming out of England, which again suggests this has got to do with Willy Gnonto's agent. Rudy Galletti, journalist in Italy, is claiming that Everton are still keen on the deal for Willy Gnonto. They had 2 offers of 20 and 23 million pounds rejected in the summer for the player. Leeds were adamant the player was going nowhere. The player went on strike, missed 3 matches for Leeds, apologised, was reintegrated back into the squad and has been a bit part player for Leeds, and was better in his last match. but has been a bit part player for Leeds so far this season, really failing to impress off the bench when he has got minutes. And he's been okay from the start, but nothing spectacular, not that we would have expected from him. But now, according to the reporter, he suggests that Everton have been in talks with Leeds for weeks. And he says that they have been working on a deal and are still, in inverted commas, working on a move, but it is unclear if Leeds United's stance on the player has softened. Another recent report a couple of weeks ago, and we covered it here as well, again coming from Italy, claimed that the 49ers had greenlit a sale of Willy Gnonto and had softened. And at that time, the rumour was that Roma, Fiorentina and Lazio were keen on the player. A move of around £13 million was what was touted. Given that Leeds rejected 22 and 23 or 20 and 23 million pounds offer from Everton in the summer, it's hardly surprising that a 13 million pound offer wouldn't even be considered from a player who is still, after all, an Italian international. There isn't a lot of money in Italy, so when you start seeing Roma, Lazio and Fiorentina being linked with the player, you can pretty much dismiss that because they just won't have the funds to do it, and Leeds won't loan the player out, or at least I don't think they will. Roma have struggled to get £10 million together for Christensen. They've struggled to get £18 million together for Diego Llorente. There's talks to them trying to renegotiate that deal with Llorente to make that deal permanent. So there's not a lot of money there. So I think you can rule them out. 20 million from Everton was the last bid, or 23 million from Everton was the last bid. Whether Leeds would consider anything else beyond that remains to be seen. But I would doubt it. And again, this is all reports coming directly out of Italy. They're coming from Italian reporters. They're coming from Italian publications. And as of right now, despite talks about Willy Gnonto changing his agent is still Claudio Vigorelli, who is still based in Italy and does like to do all this. Don't be surprised if you see Fabrizio Romano talking about this in the next couple of days as well. There'll be an agenda push there until something has been said. However, Leeds have ruled out the possibility of selling any major players in this window. It depends then whether they see Willy Gnonto as a major player for Leeds in the second half of this season. Moving on then to the final story before we get into the press conference reaction. We're going to take this out of the press conference and cover it separately. But yesterday, Leeds United confirmed that Jed Spence's loan had been terminated and the player had been sent back to Spurs, and this was labelled as a Leeds United decision. Daniel Farke would explain more today, and as expected, we didn't get a huge amount of information from Farke, but you can read between the lines on this. It doesn't seem to be anything major. Farke asked about it, and he said there was nothing major in this decision. He said that we have analysed the first half of the season for all the players, and we've analysed the festive period and the impressions of the festive period as well. Based on that decision, we have decided to conclude his loan deal and to send him back to Tottenham. He went on to say that we wish him well. He's a cool guy with a good heart, but we needed to make a decision. I think this again relates to the amount of open loan spots Leeds have, and maybe they don't feel they need a fullback, and Farke suggests that later on. Further on to this, he went on to say that he doesn't want to talk about it publicly, but the player is now a Spurs player and that he wants to handle these situations with class. And once a player is no longer a Leeds player, he doesn't want to talk about other clubs' players. We saw him do this in the summer as well. He said that as a club, we have values, we have cultures, and we wanted to change that in the club when I came in. And he said, we speak about this and we speak about players, and we have expectations on players, both physically playing and in terms of their character as well. And there are several topics that we look at here, and he went on to say then that this was one of the reasons why we brought Jed Spence in. He also went on to highlight that Jed Spence has had an impact positively this year, pointing out that his match against Ipswich was, his performance against Ipswich was fundamentally important to Leeds getting the heavy win that Leeds did. He also went on to say that nobody is perfect, and that every single player in the current squad as well as Spence have issues either personally or professionally to work on, and there are areas of the game. He gets to that when he talks about Sonny Perkins later on. Then he went on to say that we had a decision to make, and he said, and we had to make it based on the information that we had. And he said, I don't want to speak publicly, but the player did miss 8 weeks at the start of the season, which didn't help him to integrate into the squad and didn't help him to get to the level he wanted him to get to in order to be a big impact player this year. It could be just a case that he's struggling for his fitness. We've seen him play 70 minutes and come out. We saw him rested for the last game as well. Again, people talking about yesterday about possible attitude problems there. Nothing at his time at Leeds has suggested that. Daniel Farke hasn't suggested that. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but there's no facts there right now to suggest that there was a problem with the player's attitude. It just seems to be a case of he just hasn't gotten where Leeds wanted him to get to in order to be a mainstay player. I think the fact that Archie Gray has had some very good games at right back, and he's had some not so good games at right back, but no player has perfect games in every single game over the course of a season. So I think on the back of that, he's decided that that's probably free up that space and send him back on loan. But very little negative said about him. He was very positive about him. Talked about the fact that he had tragedy in his life as well this year as well. And he had to back to London to stay for a couple of days, and it's just been broken up, and he hasn't really got a full run at this to get the games that he needs. I think there will be issues around game time as well. Of like, there would probably be something in the contract that states he has to play X amount of games, and Leeds might have looked at that and just said, look, he's not going to play that amount of games, so why wait? Cut the deal short and look at other options. That's going to be it now for the news section of the video, and I'll be back in 2 seconds with a reaction and some detail on the press conference from Daniel Farke as well. So Leeds United will play Peterborough away from home on Sunday, an early kickoff in the FA Cup. Farke has been speaking about this. In terms of injuries, there's some injuries news to come. He's expected to play a pretty strong side. He did suggest during his press conference that Peterborough are decent size. We've seen Ipswich come from League One into the Championship, and he doesn't want to mess around with this, so Leeds will put a pretty strong team out. It won't be kids, and he wants to progress in the Cup. He values the FA Cup, and he likes the Cups himself. In terms of injuries, Sam Byram is out and likely will miss the next 2 games, this game and the Cardiff match. Slight hamstring strain. He said he might get back for Cardiff, but as of now they're playing it by ear, but he will be out of the Peterborough game. Carl Darlow will be out for 7 weeks with his injury. That has just been confirmed by the club. So Chris Klassen is expected to continue in goal, and Farke was very positive about what he has seen with Chris Klassen under the new goalkeeping coaches at Elland Road, so no issues there. Pascal Stroke is out as well, and possibly out of the Cardiff game with his injuries. They're unsure of the recovery time on this, but they think it might be a late call for Cardiff. They're waiting to see, but he's definitely out this weekend's game. Joffrey Gelhart's injury-ravaged season, little niggles that just stopped Joffrey getting any game time, and he would have wanted game time this weekend. He is also out of the game with a glute issue, but will be back in training next week. Joffrey just hasn't got going this year. He's had these constant little niggles throughout the season. Liam Cooper, also a slight doubt for the game. He came off after the game with a slight muscle injury, and it will be a late call on him whether they decide to play him in the game or not. Talking about the fullback areas then, and talking about bringing replacements for Jed Spence should be needed. He said it's not necessary. It's something that's immediate, no emergency situation here. He said we've got 4 fullbacks. We've got Shackleton, Archie, Byram and Firpo. Byram out injured at the moment. Shackleton out injured at the moment. Archie's a central midfielder and Junior Firpo's a left back. But he says there's no injury, there's no issue there. He was asked later on in the press conference about the fullbacks and told there were 4 injuries, and he said, yeah, we're aware of this. He said, but we think we've got enough. We're aware of the records of these players, and we're back to a more stable period of the year where it'd be 1 game per week, so we can manage their load a bit better. He said Junior's back and playing well, and if we can keep him fit, then he's an outstanding player for us at this level. But he said we will keep an eye on things over the next weeks, and should we need to move, we will move. But could be just keeping his cards close to his chest on that one, but you wouldn't know. Asked about Luke Ayling moving away from Leeds, he said he's not interested in talking about speculation or talking about this. He said he talks very highly about Luke Ayling on a regular basis. He does not want to talk about speculation about the player leaving. He said there's no signs for anything different there. He said no player has come to him this window so far and asked for a move, whereas during the summer he couldn't keep his door closed with the amount of players that were coming in looking to get away from the club. He says right now everyone's in a good spot and there's no pushing for moves. In terms of incomings, he said he was happy with the squad. It's balanced. I would disagree. I think a lot of people would disagree that the squad is balanced, but he says it's balanced, and he said there's not one position that he feels that he needs. Number 10, left back, right back, possibly number 8. There's those ones. But he said if they need options they can make moves, but he said he expects a calm and quiet window, which Ipswich have already signed 2 players. They're not hanging around. They're not taking the chance of slipping out of the automatic spots. I think Leeds should be considering that as well. Moving on then, talk about Sonny Perkins, and he was asked about why Sonny came back, and he said it's difficult to say as he wasn't that close to it. He was focused on the Leeds players, but he said it's difficult to give reasons. He said but he's not part of our plans going forward at Leeds either. He said it's very hard for a player to go out to a League One club and fail to impress. He said he did get time in training with Leeds in pre-season. He did get games, and he said he just didn't shine in those games, so he was loaned out. The fact that he's been loaned out to a League One club and not shined is a bit of a struggle for him, and he said because of that you don't come back into a championship squad and all of a sudden start competing for a place there. He said you don't get rewarded for a failed loan. So he said the player will go into the under-21s and will be worked with consistently, and they will build up the weaker areas of his game to give him every opportunity to be a success and to work himself back into a position where he can compete. But he said you won't be rewarded for a failed loan. The player has to stay humble now and work hard. The Oxford manager has refused to comment on the situation as well. He said he can't talk about the situation, so I'm not sure what's happened there. In terms of the transfer window, asked about this, he said, look, we need to be, do we need to be more careful with the signings we bring in a transfer window? And he said, yes, he's always been careful in his career. He said Leeds look for good personality, look good character, as well as skills, as well as skills. They like to put everything together as a package. It's very important to not just look at the skills, but also look at the character and the personality of the player as well. And they've brought in some really good characters and really good personalities so far. He said the existing signings have worked out because of their character. It's a good group, it's a unified group, and they don't want to detract from that. And that was pretty much it. All in all, quiet enough in terms of press conference. Didn't think we'd get an awful lot around the Jed Spence situation, and we didn't. So, yeah, an interesting one there, and it'll be interesting to see what Leeds do in this window. There's reports claiming that Leeds are planning a big window. The fact that Leeds have freed up a loan space as well. That's now 3 domestic and 5 international that they've got. Means that they could do something. Are they trying to do something? Are they gearing up for something? But as of the first 5 days of the January transfer window, no movements from Leeds in any directions, and 1 player sent back, and that's about it so far. That'll be it for me today, folks. I will be back to possibly tonight, possibly tomorrow with a preview of the game. I will get back to you on that one. That might not happen at all, just busy weekend ahead. And then back on Monday morning with more Leeds news and a review from the Peterborough game. Have a great weekend. Fingers crossed we get through, and I'll talk to you then.